Okay, try and keep this under 5 minutes. So, first things first, next game will be on the 7th at 5. There you go. Second day after will be Saturday the 8th. I think we said like 11, but we can talk about that more on Friday. And go from there. Next, it's something I've posted in the generals before, but just to kind of recap on this. So, this is kind of how I envision gearing working, because, like, obviously you only have so many slots, and this is a good way to visualize kind of the limits of it. So, like, you have your typical, like, armor, like, plate mail, leathers, whatever, kind of like your chest slot. Can either be, like, rank like, regular ass, like it's just plate mail, like your 16 AC, or it can be like magical item. Doesn't matter. You only have one like body armor slot. Same thing, but like that's like just your base AC line. Whereas like your magic items and other like stat buff shit is gonna be like your head slots, like helmets, caps, whatever, jewelry, even like a tiara, or I think we did like a circlet before. Same kind of rules apply to like arms, like think of gloves, gauntlets, other shit like that, like bracers. I know there's a lot of good ones for barbs out there. Same thing with shoes and such and so forth. Shoes and pants are kind of going to be in the same ballpark. Same thing with like the plate or like the body piece is also going to be kind of like your chest and like torso, like your legs as well. Uh, Jeweler limitations only because if you have 10 rings on, you're basically immortal. So, Dark Souls 1 rule you get 2 rings, one on your left hand, one on your right. If you lose the hand, you lose the ring with it, and such and so forth. You know how this works. Gotta have like an amulet or like a neck slot or like a trinket slot. So like I don't know. First thing that comes to mind is like a witch doctor, like effigy or like a voodoo doll kind of stuff. Like something that would be like swinging on your hip. For like paladins or clerics, like comes to mind like a 40k like spell book or like incantation chantry book. I don't know. Really just a miscellaneous jewelry or slot, right? Same thing with a belt. It's not really gonna be its own thing, but if I can find magic items that are belts, go for it. If you find them, sure. Potion slots ignored. You already know the rules on that. Weapon slots, we're gonna go off of this too, where you have two like active weapon slots at all times that you can freely switch. Otherwise, if you're trying to go to a third weapon set in the same fight, then you have to spend the action economy to switch to it. Like for a good example as of recent, Josh has been either doing his great sword and like a javelin, but usually he's opening with that, throwing it, and then at that point it's out of his hands, so switching feels free. Like, you know what I mean? But like normally he's using a torch, and then he gets into combat, drops the torch, switches to two-handing, and then if he's moving, it's kind of just assumed he's picking it up unless reasons say otherwise. But for your typical, like, I guess Crystal's a good example for like a typical like paladin. Like you got your sword, your shield, you can kind of switch between the shield and two-handing pretty freely, and that doesn't really count as like a second weapon, but like switching between like long sword and shield, sword and board, and then swapping to like a bow, that would be like her second weapon set. But if she tries to switch then to like a third weapon or like casting focus, then I'm gonna be like, okay, well, you already kind of picked your two for the fight. Again, we don't have to like sit down at the top of fights during initiative and just declare, 'cause that's cringe. It's gonna take forever. But just kind of honor system rule of thumb, self-regulate. Um, it's also something I plan on adding more of is kind of minor magic items, like just gloves that give you better accuracy, like a +1 to like AC or damage even for like fighter types, or like boots that give the slower backline characters more movement speed, like those kind of like very common uncommon items that are already written in D&D, but I might also just start adding my own that are very minor in effect to kind of get the feeling of like, oh, you're like actually gearing your character. Uh, don't expect these during levels 1 through 3 too much, but between like where it'll feel like there's gaps in leveling is probably when you're going to get more magic items, because otherwise it's going to feel like your character's kind of stagnant, and that sucks. What else? Oh, per like the act of the book or like the dungeon, I had this idea where like y'all kind of vote amongst yourselves of like who between you three or four or however many we have is like the MVP of that like dungeon. So in this case, Sunless Citadel being the dungeon of question. Like who? Like, again, you can say like, well, I fucking carried you guys. Like, you damn well better. Like again, we don't need to get nasty about it, but just like if someone was clearly like carrying, be like, okay, well, you probably deserve the item to like be kind of like an MVP reward for like just killing it, like RP, gameplay, whatever. Or conversely, we could do, hey, your character's clearly getting railed. You probably need something to kind of bring you up the line as like a balance patch to buff the lower character in terms of like power and stuff. Could talk about that when it comes up, but right now, Himhan about bringing back these, if you remember. I'm gonna scroll through all of them real quick, but just pause and read them. We got this one, longsword. Again, these are just pretty. They're copying the baseline stats of the weapon they say they are, but they're adding mechanics I kind of want to bring back because I thought they were cool the first time. Mainly weapons that set effects, and then other weapons that work off of those effects was kind of the theme when I made these. Some of these are probably way better than others, but well, asterisk, I'm probably going to tweak these based on how they go, and you're probably not going to get more than one of these a person, just because I do think they're insanely OP. But that's what makes them fun, especially if you're getting them during a lull in terms of like character power. Hang on, this one a little. Other than that, I think that was everything I wanted to cover. Yeah. DM me item requests or like items that you've seen in other people's games or like you know of that you thought were interesting. I'll at least look at them and maybe add them. Yeah, just send me stuff. Alright. And that should be it. 7 minutes.